she announced it at the all-staff meeting, not in a private office, not in the careful HR-managed setting that terminations are supposed to occupy by every professional standard and basic human courtesy. The all-staff meeting, in front of 41 people, with the specific theatrical timing of someone who had decided that the message required an audience to land correctly. "Effective today," Katherine Brennan said, standing at the front of the room with the composed authority of a woman who had spent 20 years curating her power. "Nina Cole's position has been eliminated. We want to wish Nina well in her next chapter." She looked at me when she said my name. She held the look for 2 seconds. The look said, "This is what happens." 41 people in a conference rooms on a Tuesday morning received that look's message with the specific collective stillness of people who have just witnessed something designed to communicate beyond its stated content. 3 people looked at me. The rest looked at the table. Katherine looked satisfied. I looked back at her with the specific expression I had been cultivating for this exact moment, the one I had known was coming. Since the conversation she had overheard 3 weeks earlier, the one I had been preparing for in the evenings and the early mornings, in the way I prepared for everything that mattered. The expression said nothing, it communicated everything. "My name is Nina Cole. Daughter, I am 38 years old." And the Tuesday morning Katherine Brennan announced my termination to 41 people was the last morning she stood at the front of that room, as though it belonged to her. Because it didn't. It belonged to me. Katherine Brennan had built Brennan Creative Group over 15 years, 41 employees. Reputation in the brand strategy sector that was genuine and hard-earned and real. I want to say that clearly because the story requires accuracy, and Katherine was, in the ways that were public and measurable, capable architect of creative businesses. She had built something. What she had also built, in the 15 years of building it, was a management culture organized around a very specific principle. Her authority was the load-bearing wall of the entire structure, and that anything which threatened the load-bearing wall, any idea that arrived without her, pardon it, any client relationship that existed independently of her, any person who was valued for something she had not assigned them, was a structural threat to be managed. I had been managed for 3 years. Not visibly, in any way that could be pointed to and named, in the specific, ambient way of someone whose contributions were received and redirected, absorbed into the collective, in the way that powerful people absorb the contributions of less powerful ones, distributed upward and outward with the collective's name attached, rather than the name of whoever had built them. I had documented it. For 2 years, I had documented it with the patience of someone who understood that premature confrontation produced defense, not accountability. The right time to have the complete conversation was when the complete picture was available. I had been 3 weeks from the complete conversation when Katherine overheard me. Deliberately. I had been on the phone in a corridor I had believed was empty, speaking with my attorney about next steps in what I was building, using language that was specific enough that Katherine, pausing at the corridor's turn, had heard enough to understand something was in motion. She had acted before I could. She had announced my termination at the all-staff meeting on a Tuesday morning. She had fired me before I could use what I had. She did not know what I had. Here is what I had, 2 years earlier, point when I had understood the pattern, clearly enough to begin preparing for its eventual resolution. I had begun making discreet inquiries about the building Brennan Creative Group occupied. The building was a converted warehouse in the city's creative district. 4 floors, the kind of architectural character that creative firms value, and that had made it a desirable address for the sector. Brennan Creative Group occupied the 2nd and 3rd floors on a lease that had 3 years remaining when I began my inquiries. Our daughter. The building was owned by a small family holding company the second generation of a family that had purchased it 30 years ago, and whose interest in active management had declined as the original owner's health had declined. Had spent 6 months in careful, patient conversation with that family, not aggressive conversation. The specific, pat relationship building conversation of someone who understood that the right acquisition was one where both parties arrived at the conclusion together, rather than one party being pushed toward it. Pat the family had been ready to divest. I had been ready to acquire. 14 months ago, through the holding entity I had established with my attorney's guidance, I had purchased the building, had told no one at Brennan Creative Group. The acquisition had been completed quietly, through the professional discretion that property transactions allow, when the acquiring party is not a public entity, and when the operational management of the building is handled through a property management firm whose name contains nothing connecting it to me. Pes. For 14 months, I had been Katherine Brennan's landlord. She had conducted all staff meetings and performance reviews and client presentations and the specific Tuesday morning announcement of my termination on floors she was renting from me. She did not know. I called my attorney from the parking structure 40 minutes after the all-staff meeting. I had collected my personal items, which were few, because I had understood this was coming and had been removing them gradually over 3 weeks in the specific undramatic way of someone who knows a door is closing and has decided when and how to walk through it. Her attorney's name is Sandra Park. She had been working with me for 2 years on the documentation I had accumulated, and on the property acquisition, and on the specific legal architecture of what I was building. She answered on the first ring. It happened, I said. The meeting? She said. The all-staff meeting, I said. She announced it publicly. 41 people. A pause. She gave us the public humiliation angle. I said. That changes the employment case. Yes, I said. I know. What do you want to do first? She said. Sat in my car, in the parking structure of a building I owned, and thought about Katherine standing at the front of the conference room with the look that said, "This is what happens." The lease, I said, to send the letter today. The formal disclosure of ownership, Sandra said. Yes, I said, today, before the day ends. I want her to find out today. A pause. That's fast, Sandra said. She announced my termination at an all-staff meeting, I said. In front of 41 people. I think same day is proportionate. Sandra made the sound she made when she was conceding a point. I'll draft it now, she said. You'll have it within the hour. The letter was formal, precise, written in the language of property management rather than personal confrontation. It disclosed, here, in the standard format of a landlord communication to a commercial tenant, that the building's ownership had transferred 14 months ago to a holding entity whose managing partner was Nina Cole. All future lease communications should be directed to the contact information. It was 3 paragraphs. It contained no editorializing. It was delivered to Brennan Creative Group's registered address by courier at 4:17 on a Tuesday afternoon, approximately 6 hours. After Katherine had announced my termination at the all-staff meeting, I did not send it to Katherine personally. I sent it to the firm's registered legal address, as required for formal tenant communications. The person who opened the letter was, by the specific fortune of timing, Katherine's operations manager, a woman named Diane who had been with the firm for 8 years, and who had, in those 8 years, developed the professional loyalty of someone who has watched a pattern operate and has never had the standing to name it. Diane called me at 4:43. Nina, she said. Diane, I said. I'm looking at a letter, she said. I know, I said. You own this building, she said. 14 months, I said. A silence. She doesn't know, Diane said. Not yet, I said. A longer silence. What happens now? Diane said. The lease has 22 months remaining, I said. It will be honored at its current terms for its remaining duration. After that, renewal terms will be negotiated at current market rate. It is significantly above what the firm is currently paying. That's a standard renewal situation. I paused. What happens with the employment matter is a separate conversation. The all-staff meeting, Diane said, her voice carrying something that was not quite apology, but was adjacent to it. Yes, I said. That was wrong, she said. I want you to know I thought that at the time. I know you did, I said. I watched your face. Pause. What do you need from me? She said. Nothing right now, I said. I'll be in touch about the lease transition. Katherine called at 6:12. I had been waiting for the call with the specific, patient attention of someone who has set something in motion and is giving it the time it needs to arrive. She called from her cell. Not the office line, I answered. She did not begin with preamble. You own this building, she said. Not a question. Yes, I said. For how long? 14 months. A silence that had a different quality from any silence in any previous conversation we had ever had. The managed authority, not the performance. The specific, stripped quality of someone sitting inside information that has rearranged everything. You were my employee, she said. I was your employee, I said. Property acquisition was a personal investment. It had no bearing on my professional performance, which you know was excellent, and which is documented extensively. Two were completely separate until this morning. Until this morning, she said. When you announced my termination at an all-staff meeting, I said, in front of 41 people, using me as a demonstration of what happens to people who challenge your authority. I kept my voice even, completely level, the voice of someone stating facts. That was your choice. Is the information that existed before your choice and that you would have received through a formal transition process if you had made a different one. A long silence. The lease, she said. 22 months remaining, I said. It will be honored. I run my properties professionally, and after 22 months? Market rate, I said. Which, for comparable creative sector commercial space in this district, is currently 41% above what you're paying. The silence that followed was not just silence, it was arithmetic. Katherine Brennan was doing the arithmetic of 41% above current rate applied to 2 floors of creative district warehouse space, and what that meant for a firm whose margins I knew, from 3 years of internal access, were not as comfortable as the address suggested. I'd like to meet, she said, to discuss. You're welcome to schedule a meeting through Sandra Park's office, I said. She handles the property portfolio. For the employment matter, her contact information is also in the letter. Both matters with the same attorney, she said. Both matters with the same attorney, I said. A silence. Nina, she said. Her voice had changed register entirely. All of the Tuesday morning's authority gone. What remained was the voice of a person who has understood, completely and irreversibly, the geometry of the situation is not what they thought it was. Is there a way, Katherine? I said. I'll tell you what I told my attorney 2 years ago, when I started building the documentation. I said, don't want to destroy anything. I want the record to be accurate. I want the contributions to be attributed correctly. I want the pattern to stop. I paused. Those are still the things I want. Thing has changed on my end. What's changed is that you now have accurate information about the landscape you're operating in. I paused. Schedule the meeting through Sandra. We'll go from there. I ended the call. I want to tell you what happened at the meeting and after it, because honesty requires the complete picture. The meeting happened 10 days later. Katherine came with her attorney. I came with Sandra. We sat across a conference table in Sandra's office, neutral ground, not the building, and we had 2 conversations simultaneously, the employment matter and the lease. Longer, our daughter. The employment matter resolved through a settlement that Sandra had structured with the specific thoroughness of someone who had 2 years of documentation and a public termination as the foundation of her case. Terms are confidential. What I can tell you is that the settlement was significant and that Catherine's personal attorney had advised her before the meeting. The public termination announcement at the all-staff meeting had materially changed her exposures. The lease matter resolved differently. At the end of the meeting, the employment discussion had reached its conclusion. Catherine looked at me across the table and said, "The building, what is it going to take?" I had thought about this. 2 things, I said. First, a lease renewal at current market rate, structured fairly for a 5-year term with standard escalation clauses. I will not price you out of the building. I will price you at what the building is worth. And second, she said, the work, I said, the campaigns, the client presentations, the strategy documents. I want the attribution corrected in the firm's archives, not publicly, internally. People who built those things should have their names on them in the firm's own records. She looked at the table. That's a significant internal undertaking, her attorney said. Yes, I said. It is why it's the condition. Catherine was quiet for a long time. All right, she said. Good, I said. The attribution correction took 3 months. Deanne handled it. She had become, too. In the weeks following the letter, someone who moved through the firm with a slightly different orientation than she had before. The orientation of someone who has been given a complete picture and has decided to use it correctly. She called me when the last document had been corrected. It's done, she said. How does it feel? I said. A pause. Like the record is finally right, she said. Yes, I said. That's exactly what it feels like. Brennan Creative Group signed the 5-year renewal. Market rate. Standard escalation. Professionally structured. Catherine. Catherine remained the managing partner. I had not sought to remove her. The firm was hers, and the 15 years of building it were real. And what I had sought was correction, not destruction. Pat, daughter. She and I have not spoken directly since the meeting. We communicate through our respective teams, through Sandra's office, through the professional channels that exist for exactly this purpose. 41 people were in that conference room on a Tuesday morning when she announced my termination as a demonstration of what happens. 41 people are in that building every day, working on floors that belong to me. The demonstration turned out to demonstrate something different than she intended. That is, I have decided, sufficient. Before you go, I need your honest answer in the comments right now. Attribution correction. 3 months of internal work to put the right names on the right documents where only the firm's own people would see it. Was that enough? Or should Serena have made the corrections public? Tell me exactly where you stand. Every comment gets read. If this story hits something real in you, if you have ever watched your work walk out of a room under someone else's name, hit that like button so this story reaches everyone who is still sitting in that room. Share it with someone who is documenting, building, waiting for the geometry to resolve. And if you believe that the most powerful correction is the one that makes the record right, subscribe, because every week, this channel brings you the stories of women who waited for the complete picture and then used every word of it. Your first month on Audible is free. Link in the description. Find the story that makes the record right for you.